Hey everyone! Welcome back to Story Hive. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Let's jump into today's story. My wife has been canceling date nights, rejecting my advances, and embarrassing me in public. To make her feel ignored, I planned a fishing trip. My wife and I have been together for almost 20 years, and our bedroom life has been on a slow but gradual decline for the last 15 years. We had a conversation a few months ago about rekindling the spark we once had. We both agreed on the need for date nights, among other things. Things seemed to be improving, albeit only marginally. Again, I was the one initiating things, and 90 of the time I got shot down with the usual excuses, e.g. too tired, not in the mood, child is awake, he's 18 and off doing his own thing, not feeling well, headache, aches and pains, or my personal favorite, you've got to be up for work early in the morning. Despite the challenges, we persisted with date nights. Out of 9 I organized over the last 2 months. Some were planned weeks in advance, but she would breeze in after her work shift and announce she was going out with her friends. When I mentioned our planned date night, she claimed she had simply forgotten despite it being marked on the calendar on the fridge her idea. So, on to this weekend, I spent the last 2 weeks planning a date night. Picture this, a whole weekend away, a suite in a 5-star hotel, dinner at a fancy Michelin star restaurant, tickets to the theater, something she's always wanted to do, and even shopping for some fancy clothes. I picked her up after work. She immediately started protesting, saying I had already checked the calendar and confirmed with her friends that they had no plans for the weekend. I told her everything had been taken care of and she didn't have to worry. She raised the issue of clothing, but I assured her I had it covered. She seemed to calm down and off we set, although the atmosphere in the car was cold. A few hours later we arrived at the hotel and checked in. She seemed to cheer up when she saw the suite. Her focus returned to me when she asked what I had planned. I gave her a brief rundown: shopping, sightseeing, dinner, and a show. We had a light lunch at the hotel restaurant and then went out for sightseeing. On Saturday, we headed out shopping ahead of our planned evening. Several hours later, we returned to the hotel to get ready for dinner. When she emerged from the bathroom, I was stunned. She looked amazing in a dark blue evening gown, matching lingerie, 4-inch heels, jewelry, and her hair and makeup done perfectly. My jaw was on the floor. When she saw me staring, she smiled and gave me a twirl. She looked as stunning as the day we tied the knot. The dinner went as well as it could, although there was very little conversation between us. We hailed a taxi and headed to the theater. At least I got a thank you for this part. I had also arranged for a pair of mutual friends to join us at the theater. They managed to secure us tickets. Just as the intermission started, I reached over and placed my hand over hers to ask if she liked the show so far. To my surprise, she snatched her hand away from mine like she'd been bitten by a poisonous snake. She looked me square in the eyes and told me that whatever I was thinking was going to happen tonight when we got back to the hotel, I could forget it. Her words were almost dripping with disdain and venom and were loud enough for several people around us to hear. Our friends didn't know where to look or what to say. My wife told me to move because she needed to use the bathroom. At this point, something inside me just snapped. I got up, apologized to our friends, told them I was leaving, and hoped they enjoyed the rest of the show. I received a text message from my friends just as I got back to our hotel room informing me that they had told my wife I'd left. Still seething with mounting anger, I decided to head home. I packed my clothes, caught a taxi to the nearest train station, and managed to get the last train home. I left a note for my wife along with a car key so she could get herself home. From the moment I received the text from my friend to the time I got home, I didn't receive a single text message or phone call from my wife to inquire if I was okay or where I was. This morning, I decided to relocate to the guest room. I noticed I needed some new bedroom furniture, so I headed down to IKEA. Not my best decision, especially being a Sunday morning. I've given up on building flat packs for the day. My wife, however, has asked about the new furniture. I think she realized something was up when she noticed my clothes and other personal items weren't in the master bedroom. She didn't say anything until about an hour ago when she asked why I was being so childish. I politely explained the previous canceled date nights in favor of her friends and her completely unnecessary outburst at the theater. She just shrugged her shoulders again and asked if intimacy was all I was interested in. I brought up her attitude when I picked her up from work Friday afternoon with the intent of surprising her. She told me to deal with it. I'm currently sitting on my rear deck typing this on my laptop. The anger is still bubbling inside me. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe two wrongs don't make a right, but I want her to know how it feels firsthand. I've made plans this weekend to head out fishing with an old friend I haven't seen in a few years. I have no intention of informing her where I'm going or who I'm with. I'll leave Friday afternoon before she finishes work. The area where we fish has no mobile phone coverage, so for the most part, I'll be unreachable. My son has an emergency contact for me if needed. The closest I got to an apology was when she said, "Okay, might have overreacted a little." At the moment, I'm trying to keep all options are on the table at the minute, so I'm not ruling out divorce. Update 1. My wife's best friend contacted me and asked what had gone on, as apparently my wife, I'll call her Beth, had told her only part of what happened. I filled her in on all the gory details. To say she was shocked was an understatement. She asked me what I planned to do, considering I was planning a trip to Paris for our anniversary later in the year. I stated that the trip wasn't going ahead because of her actions at the theater. My wife still hasn't apologized for her outburst. She still claims she may have overreacted slightly. Beth promptly called my wife and put her on speakerphone. Beth then proceeded to tear her a new one, and, to add insult to injury, spilled the beans about the proposed trip to Paris for our anniversary. My wife gushed, saying she knew I'd get over it as I couldn't say no to her. Her happy mood disappeared when Beth informed her that I'd canceled the trip just 10 minutes ago. As for our home life, she kicked up a bit of a stink about it until I gave her the choice. Either she's in the guest room or I am. As it stands, I'm not prepared to share a room with her for the foreseeable future. I'm also in the process of separating our finances. My name has been removed from our joint accounts, and limits on our joint credit cards have been reduced to a low limit to prevent spending sprees. She hasn't noticed any of these changes yet. I've called in a favor from a friend and had the house wired for audio and video. So far, I haven't seen any evidence that she's been cheating on me as others have suggested. I've also installed an app on her phone just to confirm my initial findings. I've turned the house upside down in case she has a second phone stashed away, but I found nothing suspicious. I've also spoken to a solicitor concerning separation and eventual divorce. I recently renewed my passport, and when it arrived, my wife's first reaction was to ask if the trip to Paris was back on. I replied rather snapped back that no, it wasn't back on, and the possibility of it ever being planned again was virtually zero. She then asked why I bothered renewing my passport. I replied that I have almost 2 months of holiday time saved up from last year and this year, so I'm planning on flying out to California to see an old friend. We've arranged a 2-week stay, followed by a few days in Ohio to catch up with another buddy. Her jaw dropped to the floor. She appeared to be trying to say something, but nothing was coming out. Yesterday morning, when I got in from work, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with Beth. From the look on my wife's face, I can only assume that Beth had torn into her again. After confirming with our mutual friends who were present at the theater, my wife appeared to have been crying. Beth stood up, looked at me, and said, "I think it's best if I leave you two alone." I'm starting to feel like I've gone too far, but it feels good to finally have my say. Update 2. Since my last update, things have only become more strained between us. My wife has been trying various tactics to break through my resolve. She's even tried to play the victim card with friends and family, painting me as the unreasonable one. I've stayed firm in my decision, despite the emotional toll. Beth has been a huge support through all of this, offering advice and perspective. She's been honest about the fact that my wife's behavior wasn't just an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern. It's been eye-opening and, in some ways, a relief to see that I'm not alone in feeling this way. My wife finally asked if we could have a serious conversation. I agreed, under the condition that it would be in a neutral setting away from the house. We met at a local cafe, where she started off by apologizing profusely for her behavior. She admitted to feeling overwhelmed and neglected, but her words felt more like a scripted response than genuine remorse. I explained that while I understand she may be feeling overwhelmed, her actions, particularly the outburst at the theater, were unacceptable. I told her that trust and respect are essential in our relationship. We discussed counseling as a possible path forward. I told her that if we were to try and salvage our relationship, I emphasized that it's not just about saving our marriage, but about understanding and addressing the underlying issues that have led us to this point. I've also begun preparing for the legal and financial aspects of separation. Consulting with a solicitor has provided me with a clearer understanding of my rights and options. I'm gathering all necessary documentation and preparing to move forward if we decide that divorce is the best path. As for the planned trip to California and Ohio, I'm looking forward to some much-needed time away from the chaos at home. It's been a while since I've had a break like this, and I'm hopeful that it will provide some clarity on what I truly want moving forward. In the meantime, I'm taking each day as it comes, focusing on my own well-being and making sure to keep communication lines open with those who have been supportive. The next steps will largely depend on how my wife responds to the idea of counseling and whether she is genuinely committed to addressing the issues in our relationship. Thanks for tuning in to today's Reddit story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on more amazing stories. See you next time.